So this is Eva Clark, and we just started a series called Becoming Our Authentic Selves, and using that as actually part of the healing process. And today what we're really going to look at in the group, it's like sometimes we end up spending too much time, or even our practitioners, in trying to cure the problem. It's all about the problem and focusing on the problem and what can I do with the problem. And it comes to the point that you're just tired of always dealing with the problem. And it's actually not healthy. But today we're going to go in the opposite way. Rather than trying to lower the problem, we're going to raise our resources, our strengths, the things that can actually help us, and also the things that can, as we talked about acupuncture, put us back into balance, but in the mental, right? So today we're going to talk about strengths. I got this quote because we're going to, from cradle to cubicle, and this person is very business orientated. I would actually say from cradle till deathbed, we devote more time to our shortcomings than to our strengths. And this isn't just because we're all pessimists. It's because since we were kids, our education system, our parents, our society, the newspaper is always focused on what's wrong. I mean, think about standard education. We have something called a report card, right? Probably 90% of schools, other than some, rad private schools, have report cards. And the concept is we have these 7 to 8 subjects that we're supposed to be good at. It's like everyone needs to be good at these 7 or 8 subjects. And there's a report card at the end of each, quarter. And in that report card, we're graded each subject. So for example, we might get an A+ in history just because we liked it and we didn't even make an effort. It was interesting. And yet we get a B- in chemistry. What happens when that occurs? Do your parents and teachers go, "Oh my gosh, you're good in history. Wow, you didn't even study and you were good"? Or does everyone, including yourself, zone in on the fact that you got a B- in chemistry, for example? What happens when we focus on the problem, and what happens when a child is, is looking at this is a problem, is that you start believing that you're not good enough because there's one area that is just not in your interest. And I was trying to find an example, and I'm going to give a really bad example. I just want to warn you, this is totally fictitious. But I was thinking, what example could I give? And think about Obama, okay? Imagine if he's in school. He is in elementary school. And to him, history class and literature and speaking in public, he's great at it. He doesn't even make an effort. And yet, he's not good in chemistry and biology, right? Imagine if his teachers, his parents, the counselor at school tell him, "Oh, you need to get better in this. You need to get better in chemistry and biology." He's going to come out of school thinking, "I'm stupid. I'm not good at this. I should do something else in life," right? Or if someone who in school or as a kid is actually really good at writing, storytelling, but isn't good in math class, and yet they say, "Oh, you got to be good in math class, because you need to be an engineer in class, or you need to be an engineer when you grow up because you can't make a living out of writing." What is that going to tell this child, right? That what he's good at has no value? With our standard education, we focus too much on the problem, and we learn, and this is what we end up doing as an adult, that we're trying to be perfect in everything. But what if we completely turn that upside down? if we actually turned it upside down and we did not focus on the areas that are just not our thing, we would be happier, we would feel worthy. If our hypothetical Obama was then seen as, oh my gosh, he's really good in this area, let's actually put mentors and tutors and give him extra classes and, you know, and actually let people know how good he is in this area, he will feel worthy, he will feel confident, and he will really understand what he contributes to the world. And one thing that wouldn't happen, and this happens to me anytime I work with kids, work with teenagers, and I've had a couple of teenagers with MS, but it's very rare, is that the whole goal is I want to be normal. We would learn that actually we're not here to be normal. We're here to find out what you're unique about. The goal cannot be to be, you know, mediocre, which is finally kind of what the school is doing, because they're wanting you to be pretty good in absolutely everything. So if instead of focusing in our standard education in what we're bad at and putting all the focus on trying to make everything more or less the same, if we focused instead on our strengths, what we would do is manage our weaknesses. We wouldn't focus on them. Of course, you can't like not know how to add 5 plus 3, but you really do not need calculus, you know, in when you're adult. So other than just managing what is the minimum this person needs about chemistry and biology, etc., if we just manage those areas without putting too much, you know, time on it, and actually cultivated our natural talents, actually put more energy in those areas, celebrating them as unique instead of going, oh my gosh, I'm stupid because I'm not like him, but celebrating like, oh wow, this is what's unique about myself. When you really put effort into the areas you're already good at, you can end up expressing them to the point of near perfection. It's like we're all trying to get there, but we're doing it in too many places, and that's not where we will flourish nor feel good about ourselves or worthy. So how do you cultivate strengths? You look at where you have natural talents, and these talents can be ways of thinking. Maybe you're big picture, maybe you're detail orientated, ways of feeling, maybe you're a motivator, maybe you're an empath, or ways of behaving. Maybe you're really good with tools, you know, figuring out tools, or maybe you're really good at studying, right? And then what you do is invest time in that area. You practice it, you develop skills, you build knowledge around that. And when you do that, you gain a strength. And when you have a strength and you know it and you've done it and you're really good at it, it really gives you that gratification each time you do it. I have one story. It was actually, there's a book called StrengthFinder that I'll comment. It talked about golfing. Okay, so Tiger Woods, what this book was saying is Tiger Woods is exceptional in a couple of moves, but not in everything related to golf. We think, oh, he's a perfect golfer, he's amazing at golf. No, he's actually not good at all the pieces. So there's a couple things, I don't know if it's like the putting, that he just manages. He does it textbook. He doesn't even try to do, you know, more than what's necessary. But there's a couple of swings that he is amazing at. And that's what he puts his most focus on when he trains. Because he knows that that is the area where he will excel to the point of, you know, brilliance. And other areas, if you try to get better at something you're not good at, you can improve a bit, you know, you can get enough to get an A in school, but you will never excel. You know, it will be managed, you know, you'll do what you can, but it'll never get to that point. So bringing this back to, well, what does this have to do with my MS, right? How can this principle that we've learned, from standard education of a little good at everything and focus on the problem and make sure that you nip those in the bud. How can those make us sick? What do you think? How can this kind of focus on our weaknesses and build those and make sure we're good at a little bit of everything? How can that actually make us sick and give us autoimmune issues? What do you think?
Can I ask a question more broader that before getting to that answer, or did you want to
Yeah.
focus on that?
Oh, no, go ahead.
So in education, there's kind of this perspective of like two different mindsets. One that's considered more of a fixed mindset that we have our strengths and weaknesses, and they're just stuck. So there's just people who are not math people and they just are not math people. Or nobody ever says there's people who are not language people, but that would be the counter to that.
Yeah.
Um, where the growth mindset is of the idea that we can always kind of change and grow, and so that kind of sometimes we can get still fixed in rather than thinking about maybe we actually might be really good at something that is kind of considered a weakness because we haven't spent time in it or been with a great teacher, for instance.
Mhm.
But I do like kind of your perspective about kind of focusing on kind of what is authentically you and kind of spending your time with that. Whether it's something that gives you joy, even if it is like a kind of maybe considered a weakness perhaps, but because you're going to then put more time and effort in it, that might become a strength too. So I guess that's
Yeah.
my thought to share.
Yeah. And I mean, I'll have clients that maybe they're, in their family, everyone's an engineer and he's actually a writer, right? Or a historian. And you can say, oh, that's a weakness. But actually, the best politicians are historians because unless you learn from the past, you'll just keep repeating it, right? And so we think certain things are a weakness or
Yeah, that's sad when history is considered like no being interested and engaged
I
in this
know.
is
And
a
then, for
bad thing.
example, my partner and I are opposites. He's all about tools and working with his hands, but in school, he got the impression I'm not good at this. I'm not good at learning. And yet now he's learning all the time. He's the one that any neighbor will come and say, hey, we have this issue. What do you think? Because he is so good with tools and with three-dimensional and, and figuring things out. Yet he has that impression, right? And for me, it's exactly the opposite. I am not good with tools and I'm quite accidental prone. And so I could be like, and I'm the bull in the china shop, right? Yet I love studying. I can spend hours on a book. I'm a resource person. It's like, ask me anything. It's all in there, right? And so those are strengths instead of, oh, you're not good at this or this. And when we end up focusing in this way of the standard education, only focusing on our weaknesses, and what we're doing in school is we're being taught that we're supposed to be good at everything. And so what happens is then we go into the job market, and when we're doing something and in our jobs, we're actually not good at it. We don't say, hey, put me in a different position. You're and for utilizing me, or you're paying for something I'm actually not good at. Instead, we push ourselves. We push ourselves to do things that we don't like, that stress us. We fake it. I had one of my clients, she was really good. She's an empath. She's really good with people, but they ended, of course, promoting her to management. And she's not good at management, right? And so what she was telling me is before her first MS exacerbation, on Sunday nights, she would be shaking before Monday because she was like, I can't do this. I can't do this. But we've always been told, oh, we can do anything. So what did she do? She faked it. She pushed herself. She pretended. She hated every minute of it. And she criticized herself. I should be good at this. Until her MS said, no, honey, get back down. You were very happy in the position you were in and you excelled, which is why they actually promoted her, right? But they promoted her out of her strengths. Another of my clients, conflicts with with autoimmune disorders. There's a lot of inner conflicts. One of my clients as well is like she got a job because it had really good retirement. All she had to do was work 25 years, 20 to 25 years, and then she was set. But she actually didn't like the job. It was actually even against her values. She was very nature orientated, and this was all about financing and making and building, and it was completely against her values. But she was like, okay, 5 more years, 5 more years. And 18 years into her profession, her MS came in and said no. And she was so pissed off. She was like, I have 2 years, for early retirement and 7 years for late, for full retirement. And she was pissed off her body wouldn't let her keep going. And I said, well, I wish your body would have stopped you earlier so you could have had a profession you enjoyed, right? When we're doing something and forcing ourselves to do everything, there's no motivation. It's like procrastination is usually because it's not exactly the thing that you love. And then, as we talked about, if we love history, but history has no value, we repress it. If we're a poet, but poetry, you can't make a living out of poetry, so you don't even do it on the weekends. We end up repressing this whole creative part of ourselves. And what that results in is burnout, depression, lack of energy. Life is hard because you're always doing things that you're actually not meant to do. It's just not built for that, right? And it becomes extremely stressful. So how can cultivating strengths and focusing on strengths help us heal? What do you think?
I would say that it just helps us get to that mindful space that we were talking about earlier, that Shakti was kind of mentioning, where we can kind of be in the moment rather than, all the past or the future.
Yeah, talk about calm body, calm mind.
Restoring balance.
You're restoring balance.
Mm-hmm.
You're not beating yourself up. You're actually working in the authentic, natural way that your body and your mind were meant to work. It's like think of us as cars, right? Imagine one person's vehicle, body and mind, is like a Porsche, and the other person's vehicle is like a pickup truck. Well, you're not going to get the pickup truck to go fast. It would make absolutely no sense. You want that to carry the load. And the Porsche, the same thing. You don't want the Porsche to carry the load. The natural way of these cars and our natural ways are extremely unique. And if we work in that area and we're aware of it and we cultivate it, we're actually working in our natural way. And what's wonderful and how our body is a program to try to help us to get and to understand what those ways is, it's actually deeply satisfying, both in the work we're doing and in ourselves, because we're like, ha, I pulled that off. There's that deep sense of just like pride, and it's a very healthy pride. And because we have that, and people are appreciating because we're doing stuff that they don't know how to do, it's like my boyfriend's like, hey, will you research that? Yep, no problem. I'm all about research, and then I'm like, can you help me with my trailer? Yeah, no problem, and so I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much, because he's doing what I can't do and I'm doing what, he doesn't like to do. And those things also fill you with love. You're not beating yourself up. You're like, oh, cool, this is what I'm good at, right? Time flies instead of 8 hours of just grueling, I got to get this done, right? We're energized. What's interesting about these strengths is when we're doing something that's our strength, it actually energizes us. It lets us be in that flow we talked about right now, that balance and that flow, which is so good for the body. And it elevates our happiness, and with it, our quality of life and that inner peace.
Absolutely.
So how do you discover these strengths and talents? Any ideas?
So I find it helpful to kind of what are the things that you get most joy from?
Yes, That's one. What happens to learning? When you're learning something that's actually your natural talent, what happens?
Yeah, you lose track of time.
You lose
Yeah.
track of time.
Right.
Usually you're like,
No.
yep, got it,
Yeah,
got it.
it's easier. It
Yes.
doesn't take as much study because you're absorbing everything.
Yeah. And what happens when someone says, hey, could you do this for me? And it happens to be one of those strengths or talents. Do you procrastinate?
No, because you want to do it.
No, exactly. You usually end up skipping lunch just to go do it, right? It's enjoyable and satisfying. We get a kick out of it and time flies. As we're learning it, it's actually like little light bulbs kind of come out. It just feels very natural. And as we're learning it, we're just like, okay, we just want to already use it. There's an impatience like, oh, I could use this here. Oh, I could do this. And it's actually, it's like we have like a monopole, like the opposite of a magnet, right? We're attracted. It's like we can't help it. We kind of want to go do those things. It keeps trying to come back to us, even when we don't have time. It's those things that you keep buying, but you don't have time to do, but you really want to. It's like we still have that attraction to it. It keeps calling us back.
Yeah.
What's interesting about these things is it tends to be our whole lives, so you can even look at what are those things as a kid that was actually also attractive. What are those things now, right? Those things in your 20s. Some of these things we discover later on. It's like I went to dancing and it was just like I hooked right in. I learned very fast. It was enjoyable. It's like, oh my gosh, why haven't I done this in 45 years? And there was something about the communication with another person's, body movements and just being able to read it so quickly. So there's a book and a test called StrengthFinder 2.0. And the book is very focused on business. What are strengths that are really good for business? But these are actually strengths that we can apply in a lot of things. And what I like about when you start really realizing what are your strengths, the StrengthFinder test, for example, gives you your top 5 strengths. And the book, like right now on Amazon, is like $16.95, and it gives you a code at the back, so you want to buy a new book, and then you can take the test, and it'll give you your 5 strengths. The good thing about knowing your strengths is when I took the test, I was still an architect. And I knew I wanted to change. I needed to do something else. There was parts of me that just were being repressed. I wasn't utilizing them. And I took this test and it really let me see what I was utilizing and then what I wasn't utilizing. And as I built on those strengths, that's when the opportunities came, because I was more focused on, can I really contribute here? Can I really contribute here? Because I was looking at and focusing on, can I use my strengths in these areas? And what I love about these strengths is you can do them even if you're sitting in a wheelchair. You can do them even if you're not working. You can still contribute these to your community, to your friends, to yourself, right? To people around you. I wanted to give an example. Someone was asking me, what is woo?
I was just looking at that.
You can look them up online. They're really interesting. All exceptionally talented in woo love the challenge of meeting new people and winning them over. They derive satisfaction from breaking the ice and making connections. That's actually a talent. And so when you start going, oh, wait, that's actually, other people can't do that. That's actually a talent. Yes, it is. Not all of us can do that. As homework, and what I wanted to suggest just for a few minutes, since our time is kind of running out, whoever can stay, is we'll do a little, speed dating. But I would love for you guys to maybe share with each other what seems to come quite naturally to you. And it could be things like, for example, I love organizing. If I have a neighbor or friend who's like, oh my God, I got to organize my garage, I'm like, hey, you put the beers, I'll help you organize. I love doing it. It comes naturally. It energizes me. It does not exhaust me. So it's like, find those little things. What things are actually enjoyable to you? And then how would you cultivate them, right? How would you even strengthen them? Also, those natural or bring you energy, right? Those are sometimes the things that you realize, oh, actually, this is one of the good things. And then ask yourselves, what is super tedious and drags you down? Those things that you just keep procrastinating. And then think about, could I exchange with somebody else, or how could I delegate those?